All right, good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining Vicon and IBM for this special tasting event, which is titled Adapt and Lead with Watson AIOps and NetCool Ops Manager. We are looking forward to it, and we are glad you could all join us today. Please note that we will be recording this event today, but just the presentation portion of it, the first 35 or 40 minutes or so. So my name is Andy Jonak, and I am Director of Marketing for Vicom Computer Services, and I will be hosting things today. So today's event is hosted by both Vicom and IBM. We've been working with IBM for many years, have over a 2-decade relationship with them, and they're one of our most important strategic partnerships. And we're an IBM Platinum partner, which is the highest level of certification and partnership that we can have. And we represent all of IBM solutions as part of our portfolio. So now let me introduce the others that are part of our event today, starting with Vicom. I'd like to introduce Lambert LaChapelle, who's a Senior Client Success Manager here at Vicom and is responsible for helping firms be successful through the use of IT solutions and services that Vicom provides. I'd also like to introduce Manoj Kabe, who's Vicom's Senior Director of EMS, or Enterprise Managed Services. And Manoj and his team work with firms to help drive operational and security efficiencies within their environments. Also like to introduce our featured speaker today, James Mellinger from IBM. And James is the Chief Technologist for IBM's AI solutions across the Americas. Again, James is a featured speaker and SME today, and we're really excited to have him with us. Also want to introduce our other guest speaker, who's Adam Dennis with Host Events. And Adam is our spirits expert and will be hosting our whiskey tasting right after our presentations today. He's not on yet, he's going to be joining towards the end, but we're looking forward to it, and we are glad to have Adam with us today. So let me just take a minute and go through the logistics for today and what's happening. So the event is scheduled for 2 hours total. And as I mentioned, we'll be recording just the presentation portion of the session, the first 30 to 45 minutes or so. So our presentations are going to take about 35 minutes, and then we will leave some time at the end of the presentation for questions, and then move on to our tasting with Adam. But if you do have questions during the event, even though we've parked some time at the empty Q&A, please feed them up through the chat window, so we'd be happy to address them throughout the presentation. All attendees will continue to be muted throughout the presentation, but everyone can unmute for the Q&A. Also, we're going to ask that everyone keep their cameras off during the presentations, but we will ask that everybody turns them on during the whiskey tasting. So we hope that you find the event fun and the information presented today to be intriguing and, most importantly, useful, as what we're discussing today is something that we see as so important to the firms we are working with and talking with right now, which is about increasing operational efficiencies. So with that said, thank you again for joining us, and let's go ahead and get going. As we start, let me take a quick moment to remind people on who we are. So the organization that we are part of is Vicom Computer Services. And Vicom is a full-service multi-cloud infrastructure provider that helps firms with their IT and cloud infrastructures to help them wherever they might be throughout their digital transformation journey. Our domains of expertise include IT infrastructure and multi-cloud solutions, networking, operations and service management, which is what we're going to be talking about today, enterprise network and endpoint security, staff augmentation, and professional and managed services. Our solutions and offerings can help organizations wherever they sit in regards to the maturity level of their IT environments, their solutions, or their overall needs. So that's a little bit about Vicom and what we have to offer. So what I'd like to do now is turn it over to Manoj Kabe, Vicom's Senior Director of EMS, for a few minutes to talk about what Vicom does as part of our EMS practice, which Manoj heads. So Manoj, I'm going to go ahead and hand it over to you. If you can please go ahead and unmute yourself.
Sure. Thank you very much. Thank you, Andy. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you very much for taking the time of the day and joining for this event. Without further ado, I would like to get started so we can quickly go through the presentation and go to the exciting part of the whiskey tasting. Many of you already know who Vicom is, I think what Andy was mentioning. But for those who don't know us, I would briefly like to talk about, our framework helping clients through cloud operation and automation journey. As everyone knows, as much as the cloud provides an opportunity to be faster for time to market, or giving you the agility or scalability and bringing the efficiency, it has its own challenges to manage. And this is where our unique implementation framework is designed to address the challenges, helping clients to plan the cloud migration, cloud transformation journey, get you the visibility you need across the multi-cloud environment, secure the infrastructure, and further detect problem across the environment before they impact your customers. Further allows you to automatically perform a remediation or repeatable tasks by leveraging your service management, ITSM portfolio, or CI/CD automation tool sets. This approach allows you to provide highly available and reliable service to your customer. So let's understand why it is so important. Few weeks ago, I was actually at IT operation workshop, and what I see exactly is how the typical day zero IT operation looks like. If you look at this screen here, I'm pretty sure you are very familiar with such scenario, having multiple technologies from different vendors and for purpose-built solutions for log management to observability management, going into APM solutions or a service desk performing their job to improve the efficiency in operations, and also tying them with your cloud automation technology. This picture is pretty familiar, and you have seen the scenario we see quite often. So what I see, in this situation, data volume is rapidly growing across your systems, networks, application, and it is coming in from different variety and velocity. And if you look at the rate of change and how the cloud native architecture or how it is ephemeral, it actually presents challenges even to observe and improve. And what we believe is, that user needs to be empowered for trustworthy and actionable data in real time in order to constantly respond and take actions. So with this challenging our infrastructure, actually it makes it operations life even harder and often challenging to manage. This is where Watson AIOps kind of helps you to harness the power of data that is available. Giving teams the actionable insights by leveraging NLP techniques across unstructured or structured data and proactively resolve outages. It basically connects the dot and connects the data between your tickets, your topology, and help you to prioritize what requires attention first. It surfaces the advice to your workplace, maybe if you know SREs using Slack or Teams, and it allows those SREs to even collaborate further and actually simplify those labor-intensive remediation activities or automation activities by confidently automating it. So, I'm pretty sure if we all are curious, how does it really fit into this NetCool portfolio? How do we really start? That answer lies into this slide. Watson AIOps leverages your existing investment into IT platform. It further helps you to drive automation and augment team efficiency. Whether you are using IBM product sets or non-IBM product sets, it helps you to bring that consolidation layer, correlation layer. And if you are already using NetCool platform, then you are actually getting an early head start to accelerate the adoption of Watson AIOps. And you start leveraging its AI/ML capabilities for better operation and automation, being able to detect anomalies via log data, being able to integrating with ServiceNow for looking at incident similarities, or look at your unstructured and structured data and leverage the next best action that can be surfaced to your ChatOps teams to further automate with confidence. So that being said, I think I would like to have James Mellinger from IBM to hear IBM's perspective on how they see the customers adopting and infusing AIOps in their IT and cloud operations. So that being said, Andy, thank you, and back to you.
Sounds good. Thank you, Manoj. Appreciate it. So now what we're going to do is I'm going to turn it over to James Mellinger from IBM to discuss AIOps for us. Before I do, I think it's appropriate to do a quick read of his bio so everybody understands what he's about. So as he said, he's the chief technologist for IBM AIOps solutions across the Americas, and is a recognized expert in AIOps, service management, and enterprise operations. James regularly consults with executives and thought leaders to maximize information technology's role in improving business outcomes, and has helped numerous customers achieve AIOps excellence. James is an insightful and engaging speaker with more than 15 years of experience in the field and a broad customer and solution background. His leadership has been recognized by many awards and honors, including IBM's what they call Best of IBM award, which is a distinction bestowed on only 500 of IBM's 400,000 employees. So James, it's all yours. If you'd go ahead and unmute yourself and share your screen. And
Great. Thank you very much. And the check's in the mail. I really appreciate the high praise. And I just want to say, one of the things that is most telling to me is how often I find in those successes I've been fortunate to be a part of, that Vicom has been one of my collaborators in that, and I can't thank you enough for that. One thing, Andy, if you could make it possible to share the screen. Right now it's got.
Oh, yes. Hold on one second.
Sure.
Yes. Okay. There we go. Okay. James, you should be good now.
Great. Thank you very much. All right. So as we get in, just a quick headshot there. That's me without makeup or anything on the right there. No, in all seriousness, this is just one of the really exciting times, because finally the capabilities of AI have come together with the ability to execute on this. It's something that our chairman, Arvind Krishna, all the way through our entire operations is top of mind. And it's really an interesting time because even in spite of COVID, every executive I talk to at every customer is asking about AIOps. It's not just something we're coming and talking about that's the latest buzzword. It truly is something that customers are seeking out as a differentiator. And so when we get into this presentation today, one of the things I wanted to highlight is everything I'm going to talk about today is generally available software, things that have been available for many months, actually, or many years in some cases. And there will be one, maybe two things that will be future looking, and I'll call those out as we go. And as previously mentioned, if you have questions, by all means, let us know. This is a nice, intimate group. I wish we could be doing this in person, but we'll be doing that soon enough, I hope. And just one side note: the working title in this presentation was IBM Watson AIOps enables you to drink because you want to, not because you have to. So that plug put in. I just give you a little bit of background. When we started talking about bringing an AIOps offering out years ago. Now, we were bringing out AIOps capabilities in the NetCool suite before AIOps was even a space that Gartner looked at, or even a term that they were using at the time. And when you think about what that means, it means we've had a plethora of time to really have the most consistent and cohesive and holistic offering, while many latecomers to the party are talking about AIOps or rebranding their sites AIOps. In reality, they're only looking at a domain, or they're really only looking at a certain space or a certain application. We're looking at it holistically, the ability to do what more now than ever, IT is the face of the business. So we are really looking at how can we enable businesses to be that differentiator, enable the IT to be that strategic business enabler and differentiator. Because one thing that is consistent in study after study, the most admired companies have IT front and center as their differentiator and their enabler. And we want to help you to do that. So when we talk about what's happening, I'm quite confident that everybody on the call today has got plenty of tools. It's not a question of do you have tools. That's not the situation here. It's not a question of do you have smart people. Yes, you absolutely have smart people, or you wouldn't be here today. But what you are finding consistently across the board, no matter what industry I talk to, my customers are telling me, hey, I've got these really, really crazy smart people. I've adopted SRE, or site reliability engineering. I'm still finding myself pushing uphill constantly to show that value, to show that expertise, because it's just a grind. Day in, day out, I'm chasing down problems, I'm patching issues. I'm just continually in this hamster wheel, and I'm just not able to get into the really cool stuff that I'm trying to, and I want to, and my people want to do. And so this is really key to us. How can we help you to do that? How can we make it possible so that as you go forward, how can you simplify the complexity? And as Andy mentioned, as Manoj mentioned, the world just is getting seemingly exponentially more complex day by day, by week. There's multiple clouds. Everybody's shop has got multiple clouds, not a question of, oh, I just got AWS. You've got AWS, you've got Google, you've got Microsoft, Salesforce, who knows how many others out there. Average is 6. You've got situations where today you've got lots and lots of screens, and when everything is red, what really matters? What is it I need to pay attention to? We've lived through the age of trying to get from reactive to proactive, or at least most of my customers have. There's some that are still got training wheels on, but in general, everybody's moved from being reactive to being proactive. where we're going and where we're able to deliver today and take you to is a realm where you can prevent the outage. You can prevent the business impact. And as I'll show you towards the end of the presentation, where we're taking this portfolio is even to get earlier in the cycle in integrating development, security operations, DevSecOps, so we could actually intercept incoming code changes before they're implemented, before they impact the business. So, really getting into the realm of how can we not just help you respond faster, not just how we can help you to improve accuracy when there are issues and take it to the right person, but now really get ahead of the game and really allow IT to be and operations to be the superheroes within the business. When I look at what's consistent across the board as we talk to dozens of CIOs and CTOs and hundreds of IT ops leaders over the last year or two, the key messages that I took away from it were that the current tools just don't cut it. They've got lots and lots of tools and they might do one thing good, but it's very fragmented. It doesn't give a complete and holistic view. And anybody can tell you when your customers talk to you about your services that you provide, they don't talk about it in the realm of names of systems and routers and things like that. They talk about transactions and applications, things they tried to do. I tried to purchase this from you. I tried to get this information from you. And I tried to order this service from you. And if they can't, then they move along. The patience level has gotten dramatically reduced with everybody being accustomed to, I want it, I must have it. As I'll jokingly refer to it, drinking and priming. The opportunity to say, I want something, and it shows up 2 days later, and you don't even remember that you ordered it. The opportunity to really look through all the things that are being fed in, all these signals from all these different places. And as you're going through this digital transformation, how is it possible to really glean the insights across all of those signals without just getting weighed down and again, back onto that hamster wheel? All of this is really likewise taken a human toll. You're seeing more and more organizations that are really, really finding it more and more difficult to acquire those unicorns, those site reliability engineers, to really maintain them, to be able to put them into positions that don't burn them out, that give them the opportunity to really build for the future. And that's what this is really about. How can we enable each of those things? And across the board, we've been very, very successful with shops that have already embraced Watson AIOps and are already seeing the value proposition loud and clear very, very early on. I'm excited about being able to share more of this with you today. So when we look at how things exist in most shops, it's quite likely that you've got plenty of tools sharing plenty of information. If people know where to go to get it, if people understand what it's telling them in the first place, then they might be able to connect the dots. You heard Manoj use one of my favorite phrases about being able to connect the dots to understand what's really happening in an environment. And one of the things that I'll often say, I'll attribute it actually to the rightful source. I didn't originally say this, but I've often repeated, insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different outcome. And so we have to think differently about how we're going to solve these problems. We have to look at it and say, what is it that we can do rather than just throw more good money after bad? Because these tool silos, throwing more money at it isn't going to improve your operational outcomes. If we look at what we're trying to do now, it's really, if an outage comes in, this map on the left is a real example from one of our early adopters of Watson AIOps. They were receiving a notification in PagerDuty or Slack, and then they get from there, they go and look into tools like Splunk to get additional information. They'll go into ServiceNow to get trouble ticket info. They'll go into Datadog to get additional details. They'll email somebody. They'll sorting all this stuff out, jumping from tool to tool, digging through the data, even if they know what they're looking at. And oftentimes they have to call in more people because they don't themselves know what they're seeing. They just know, I'm supposed to do these tasks and step by step by step. It really leads to a huge amount of time, a huge number of steps, a huge number of people involved, and in the end, a really high cost to the organization. All of these ops tool stacks are way too manual and way too subjective and way too dependent upon tribal knowledge that only exists in a handful of people. Within that, it's very difficult when you've got 15 different screens that are all red. where do I pay attention? What do I look at first? Where do I go from here? And the way that it surfaces the information is completely different across these tools. So while they all may be saying the same thing, that there's an issue in my order fulfillment, they all manifest it in multiple different ways, leading to people getting together on bridge calls where the only objective is how fast can I get off this and prove it's not my problem. So the ability to take in all this information and actually do something meaningful, or better yet, to be able to prevent it from happening in the first place, that's where we're taking you with Watson AIOps. In this specific scenario that I'll revisit a little bit later on, this particular user took about 5 hours, 17 manual steps across 4 different tools, and pulled in 10 different people to resolve the issue. And by this organization's own estimate, that was the $135,000 cost to the organization. We're going to revisit this in a moment just to show what the difference adopting Watson AIOps made. So what is Watson AIOps? Why are we doing this? What's the point anyway? Considering, as I mentioned before, we've been involved in the AIOps space since before it was a term. We've been leveraging capabilities in Netcool to deliver these things. So what is the goal? When we put it simply, it's about being able to pull together the convergence of development, security, and operations into a holistic and integrated approach that delivers on the promise of artificial intelligence, the capabilities of machine learning, and does so in a way that's exceptionally consumable. It doesn't require an army of data scientists in a year to get up to speed. So when we look at this, there's 6 key principles that we believe should really define and influence your strategy. And it's also the things that are driving our path forward. It starts with being able to manage in a multi-cloud environment where you've got cloud, traditional cloud purveyors like AWS and Azure and Google, where you've got other things that are happening in a hybrid environment where maybe you've got some things on-prem, some things in the cloud, and maybe you still got a mainframe out there. Maybe you still got other large systems that, not for the lack of trying, you still have in place 10 years after you planned to put them out to pasture. You have to bring all that together because your critical applications and your customers, they're depending on these things. So you need a holistic view across 100% of the resources that give you full visibility into all these key performance indicators, and they really reduce the dependencies on certain skills that are in short supply so that we can then maximize your value, reduce the cost, minimize the risk. When we look at part 2 of this, it's about being application-centric for your operations. You cannot have a sea of different tools, islands of tools that are only a piece of the application stack or only a single piece of what goes on in providing that capability to the organization. In the end, you need to be able to see an end-to-end app-centric view that enables site reliability engineers to really own the applications, not just individual components. And this app-centric view also, it fosters collaboration among different roles, different people in the DevSec and Ops domains, so they can look at it holistically and how it evolves for the individual customer scenario that's unique to you. When you think about security and compliance, this means having policy-centric management, so you can put into place these policies that are going to assure you don't get in the ditch. These are good, I call it like the bumper rails when you used to go bowling as a kid. The ability to have these guardrails that keep you from doing something to yourself. Quite often we see that these types of tools are quite good at just getting us in trouble faster. And so by having a secure and compliant focus by design, this means that that's already been factored in and to help yourself. In terms of what we're doing in terms of AI at the core, this is the ability for us to leverage AI in all the ways that are possible. IBM in the AIOps domain has already got over 100 patents related to AIOps. The capabilities and the ways that we're doing this are delivering in very, very quick turnaround things that our competitors only wish they could do. And so by being able to do this and do it in a way that expects it to be a heterogeneous environment, We're not saying back up the truck and throw away everything you've got and replace it with an IBM tool. Far from it. We've got out-of-the-box integrations. And as Manoj and Andy mentioned, the plethora of data that you've got, we can take advantage of on day one. This is not something where you're going to have to go and do a tools rationalization before you can even get value out of it. By having that open ecosystem, that simply means what tools you've got today, what tools you adopt tomorrow, it all comes together cohesively within the Watson AIOps portfolio. And it means that we now have the opportunity to bring insights to the way that people want to work today. We've lived through the age of dashboards. I won't say that dashboards are fully passé, but the vast majority of my customers are like, look, I'd rather you just tell me what I need to pay attention to rather than me have to go chase it down. And we've implemented that initially within the first Slack teams now, as well as the ServiceNow interface. We will be in the coming release in Q2 and Q3, providing additional web-based UIs for those that don't want to fully embrace a Slack or Teams type approach. Again, this continues to be about choice and how we go about delivering this as part of our strategy. Just take a breath here and make sure, Andy and team, we got any questions so far? Are we good?
Let me see. No questions so far.
Excellent.
But yeah, and we're doing great on time. So please keep going, James.
Excellent. Thank you, Andy. Okay, so when we look at the world before and after implementing AIOps, this is a synopsis of what we saw on average with a dozen customers who've been our early adopters of the Watson AIOps tools. For many of them, the time to detect that there was an issue took as much as 2 days. To identify what was the actual cause, another half of a day, another 12 hours. The time required to diagnose, how did we get there and what do we need to do about it, another day. And then the time to implement the repair, an average of 6 hours, and the complete resolution, restoration of services, another 6 hours. By leveraging Watson AIOps, the time to detect was reduced to real time. And by that, I'm simply mean the Watson AIOps ingestion of all these signals gave us the capability to identify the anomaly in the log data, as well as in the performance data. In many cases, we're ingesting Splunk data, ingesting Humio for logs, ingesting things from elk stacks into our log ingestion capabilities. We're bringing in, from a performance data perspective, IBM tools, as well as AppDynamics, Dynatrace, some Prometheus open source, all those things coming together, leveraging our real-time anomaly detection to learn what good looks like from what not so good looks like, what anomalous looks like. Being able to identify, hey, this shouldn't be happening. Being able to see those trends emerging while it's smoke before it becomes fire, if you will. Being able to understand the causality and diagnose what the problem is, what's impacted and why. Being able to understand in a real-time basis what brings all these signals together. And then being able to remediate those problems, being able to glean insights from your ServiceNow or your Remedy or other systems via natural language, being able to actually pick up, what did we do about this last time via similar, the similar scenarios, similar incidents that have happened? What actions did we take? And even as we go forward, future looking statement here, being able to have our runbook automation and our robotic process automation observe things that are commonly done manually and automatically build robots to perform those tasks for you in the future. So a dramatic reduction in the amount of time that it takes to diagnose and to resolve, being able to reduce the skills. So you're talking about being able to take less skilled operators and move them along much, much faster because of this AI capability. And now being able to get earlier in the whole role of the outage to actually, in some cases, be able to prevent the outage from occurring and capture it, like I said, while it's smoke before it becomes fire. If I look at, okay, I've heard AIOps talked about by, about a half dozen different companies now. How's Watson AIOps different? I often get that question. And one of the things that I'll very keenly talk about is how Watson AIOps is absolutely unique in its approach to signals, taking in data signals from everything you've got. It's not just a log tool. It's not just a performance tool. So logs, you got Splunk out there, but their natural language capability is virtually non-existent compared to what we're doing. You've got tools like MoogSoft and others that are just looking at event data. They're really not able to understand topology. You've got other tools like AppDynamics, Dynatrace's tools as well. And those are really only looking at certain apps or certain domains. They're not, again, not looking holistically. So being able to have a complete view of the application, no matter whether it's legacy or next generation microservice based, the ability to plug in all that data in your portfolio and to really make this work within your existing processes and surface the data so you can work the way you want to work. Being able to do this in such a way that pulls together all of the domains of development, security, operations together and gives you capability of delivering insights on each of those different outcomes. The installation and the time it takes to receive value. For us to do it, we're averaging from the time we start until the time it's in production showing real value, an average of about 90 days versus a year. We've had already instances where we've replaced MoogSoft and we've replaced other tools that they were at it for a year or more before they said, okay, we gotta stop throwing good money after bad. We got to go a different route. And so this is really where we keep seeing that customer after customer who's gone this path with us is coming back and saying, wow, this is not just the latest buzzword. This is truly delivering explainable AI with the evidence-based insights that I need to be able to enable my business and become that enabler to the business. If I look at what Watson AIOps brings as part of our, I really, really want you to think about this as a journey. AIOps is going to be a journey. It's going to be a crawl, walk, run, hopefully crawl, walk, run, fly for most of you. And what that simply means is, in the crawl stage, it's about being able to have that instrumentation across all of the different components. One of the things I want to make sure everybody's aware of, we recently acquired a company called Instana. And Instana is the undisputed leader when it comes to observability. And observability simply means being able to instrument everything that you've got within your microservice-based applications and beyond, full stack views of the world. And that's going to be a first-class feed into Watson AIOps as we go forward. But being able to collect that data along with all of the other relevant data that you've got from all these other sources, getting, in this case, the unstructured data, things that are in logs today, things that today most people, most organizations, unfortunately, don't even go and look at until there's already been a problem and they're just trying to understand how do we keep that from happening next time. It's being able to look into your tickets in ServiceNow, in Remedy, and understand the insights that are there about, okay, what did we do last time and what's our process like for handling these things? It's about being able to get the structured data from all of your monitoring tools. As I mentioned, our Instana, as well as AppD, as well as Dynatrace, as well as open source like Prometheus. It's about being able to get events and alerts. Now, traditionally, we've done this with Netcool, and we'll talk more about where Netcool fits into all this momentarily. But all of the events and alerts, by the way, just in case we've got anybody on the call who doesn't already have Netcool, just so you know, we already have some Watson AIOps customers who were not Netcool customers. They were using Datadog or they're using PagerDuty, other tools. So just to be clear, you don't have to be, we love you if you are, but you don't have to be a Netcool user to be able to get value out of and to start taking advantage of Watson AIOps. In addition, one of the things that really keenly differentiates us, and this is what Gartner and Forrester have already told us, and I would say they already confirmed for us, we knew this, that our capabilities around topology are unique. The fact that we are not doing traditional discovery. Discovery as you knew it, where you went out and scanned the network every 24 hours or something like that. That's by and large dead when you get to doing things across the cloud or you're doing things in a multi-cloud environment where different Kubernetes containers are built up and torn down in a matter of minutes. So we went a different route. We went a new route. We introduced observability where our observers are tapping in at the API level to the services that are building up and tearing down these things, as well as more traditional IT like VMware, being able to see the vMotion, when you see these things moving both on-prem or off-prem, being able to have a real and up-to-date view of the topology, to thread multiple sources of topology. So threading, for instance, the transactions within what Instana is showing or what App Dynamics is showing, thread that together with the observed architecture of your cloud-based app that we're getting from AWS. Thread that together with other sources of topology information, such as your business infrastructure from ServiceNow. Being able to pull all these things together and do that in real time. To even be able to track changes over time, so you can understand, and the AI can learn when change causes those problems, when change causes things that become smoke and then become fire, being able to identify those things for you and be able to understand and roll back over time to see where that was induced into the system. By being able to do this, this simply means that I've got a much greater awareness of what's happening in my environment, and I can get that data to the right people, leveraging ChatOps capabilities. I can integrate that further into my workflow. So if I've got highly automated business processes in ServiceNow or in other tools, this can be directly integrated at an API level into them. Being able to do this simply means I now know, without having to do manual labor, how the different events, alerts, and all the other signals that I'm receiving, how they're all related and what the most probable cause is, and give me my next best action right there at my fingertips. So I mentioned it's a journey. And really what it comes down to is Watson AIOps is driving the efficiency journey. You talk about the capability set, and it really is, I mentioned crawl, walk, run, and hopefully fly. Being able to, let's start with understand. What's all the noise I've got? I've got to consolidate. I've got to prioritize. I've got to make sense of the noise. I need to move from that. I need to evolve into anticipation. I need to be able to get distant early warning that something anomalous is happening and be able to take proactive action to remediate before it becomes a big issue. And then as I mature, I need to get to where I can have AI and I can trust this AI because it's explainable, what it is that I'm seeing, why am I seeing it, what I should do about it, and hopefully get the human out of the control loop and actually have the AI automatically fix it. So let's dive deeper into these capabilities. So when we talk about deepening your understanding begins with, how can I take all of the data, all the relevant data across all the events, all the metrics, all the logs, and bring it all together, no matter how large that use case is. One of the things I want to highlight here is, unlike Splunk, unlike a lot of the others where you pay by ingestion and thus are penalized for having lots and lots of data, we're not like that. We're looking at this and saying, the more data you bring, the better off we are. Being able to have our capability to curate the incoming data and have the tool do that for you so that it knows this is what matters. These are the things that relate to each other. It doesn't require the level of detective work that you would traditionally have to do with other tools. It also means that I've got an immediate ability to understand, based on analytics, as the data is ingested, I'm able to actually refocus what I'm paying attention to, because I'm not having to manually build event grouping rules. I'm not having to manually set thresholds. I'm able to understand, based on observation, what matters, what's anomalous, what things are related to each other. And I'm able to do this without having to throw yet another tool at my operations team. I'm able to put this in place so that my AI acts just like the next best subject matter expert, or SRE, on those chats. It pulls in the relevant people. It knows who to approach about the different things, and is able to integrate, again, with your ServiceNow environment that knows who's on call right now or what tasks are responsible for what departments. The ability to pull all those things together mean a dramatically enhanced and really, really automated approach to problem identification and problem resolution. When we talk about anticipating and becoming more proactive, this is about taking our patented AI for entity linking and understanding the causality. How are these things related to each other? How are these things impactful to each other? Being able to understand, what's downstream and what's secondary impacts based upon the blast radius that I have automatically built, the AI is automatically built based upon the sources of topology and the relationships therein. This simply means I now can use AI to draw these inferences across silos. The NLP, or natural language processing, lets me extract methods that go way beyond just patterns or time series analysis. This means that I've got the opportunity to recognize similar incidents based on histories and have an issue context graph. I've also got the opportunity to understand anomalies in the performance data as they emerge the very first time. How many times I think about how many times that I've talked to customers who've gotten really good at capturing the black box when something goes sideways. But they always say to me, if only I had been able to know before that happened, if only I had known that these indicators meant I was going to have this problem. Now you can. And that's really what's one of the most exciting capabilities, the ability to have issue avoidance. And as we get further down our path into the fully auto advice, what I would classify as the improve segment, the opportunity to remove the redundant manual activity, really being able to infuse automated learning AI models so that I can understand what the previous successful resolutions and remediations were. I can recognize current incidents and say, hey, what did we do before? How did we fix this before? Without having to pull in 16 different people and hope that the person that has that bit of knowledge, that communal knowledge, is on call at that time. It means I have the opportunity to now fully automate responses to things that happen commonly. This means I can, stop fighting fires and get on into the more valuable, the more rewarding sets of things that IT people want to do today. And by being able to do this, where we're taking this again as a roadmap item is having robotic process automation observe what the operators are doing, and then to replicate that automatically, not have to manually build these policies, build these runbooks, but have the RPA identify it, offer to create a runbook for it, and bam, it's done. That's really exciting in terms of what that means just in terms of living with. I would encourage you not only to think about what it's going to be like to stand up Watson AIOps, but what's it going to be like to live with it? What kind of new capabilities does this bring to the table? So living with Watson AIOps, as I mentioned, that same customer that before it took 5 hours, 17 steps, 10 different people involved, by being able to break down those silos, bring it all together, in this case, in Slack to tell the story. They were able to accelerate the diagnosis. They were able to skip whole steps that were basically cul-de-sacs in their problem solving. They were able to skill up their engineers to make them more effective. It was able to replace things that were traditionally highly subjective, where the outcome would be different depending on who was on call, so that you get a consistent outcome. And by doing this, they're able to reduce the outage that, again, this wasn't just a one-time thing. This was something that happened on a semi-regular basis. Things that averaged 5 hours to resolve, now 14 minutes, 4 steps, 1 person involved, and the net impact to the business, $6,000 versus $135K. And if you think about this and where they themselves, their own words, say they want to take this, they are eager, chomping at the bit to embrace more AI, to be able to have these things fully automated and not require that even that one person, not require even that 14 minutes, but to allow it to get to a level. And again, this is a near future statement like Q2, Q3, where if the AI has greater than a threshold, 80%, let's say, confidence that it will resolve the problem, allowing it to go about doing that before even bringing the first human into it. And that's a really, at least for me, that's a really exciting prospect. And I'm eager to see that happen and get to share that with you all in future discussions. So for those of you that do have NetCool, again, I'll say it again, we love you. We're very, very happy. Jamie Tasman, a lot of folks on the call came to IBM through the Micromuse acquisition. So NetCool remains near and dear to us. And if you look at where that fits in, the NetCool foundation for AIOps provided a level of capability for event correlation and consolidation. It provided that clustering, the ability to identify a weighted probable cause, and really within the predictive insights, get to a dynamic thresholding, the ability to identify anomalies in that data flow. It also, within the Agile Service Manager, added the capability for that dynamic dependency mapping to understand how these different topologies are related to each other. So that's the foundation, that along with the runbooks for guidance and resolution. Those are the pieces that Watson AIOps started with. They said, okay, you guys have got a solid foundation. Now, in the let me add peanut butter to the chocolate type scenario, they came in and said, what we've got is the ability to really understand natural language better than anybody. If you throw, if you went around the room and asked for everyone to describe a particular outage, we could all be talking about the exact same outage, but we could say it 30 different ways. That's the challenge of natural language. That's where the Watson AIOps capabilities really excel, especially beyond anybody else in the market. The ability to take what's in the logs, in that structured or semi-structured or completely unstructured data, to identify what a good running system looks like from a log, and to be able to draw insights to say, okay, this is anomalous. We shouldn't be seeing these things in the logs. Same thing with the tickets, being able to glean insights based on what you say you did to resolve things, what steps you recommend, other associated tasks that are present there, along with the capability to glean additional text, relationship data, as well as further connect the dots from the events that we're traditionally leveraging the Netcool AIOps capabilities for. What this simply means is the AI is driving the model selection. It's determining out of the hundreds of different models, which one is going to glean the best insights, which one is going to provide the best outcomes. So again, that's oftentimes another question I get. What's the difference between machine learning and AI? Machine learning are the individual algorithms themselves. AI is where it's self-aware enough to be able to understand, what do I deploy, what do I employ to be able to get the best possible outcomes. By leveraging all these things and taking these different signals across dozens of different platforms and being able to surface it in a story, in a ChatOps style environment, and soon via its own web-based UI, the ability to drive out of that as an outcome the associated runbooks, and again, soon the robotic process automation. This means that I can now get a much more cohesive outcome. If you think about what we've done, this means taking structured data in the form of topology, in the form of the metrics, in the form of the events and alerts, combining that with the unstructured or semi-structured data in the logs and tickets, and bringing it into the one cohesive Watson AIOps solution that leverages the next evolution of capability related to events and metrics from the Netcool lineage, along with additional new capabilities around topology and blast radius and associated entity linking, along with the AI manager, which gives me that level of log anomaly detection to complement the performance metric anomaly detection we already had, along with the ability to triage different things, different input signals to provide what's my next best action, and to be able to take that and look at my prior tickets and glean insights about what we recommend to do about it, and put this all forward in a easy to understand, site reliability engineer compliant, if you will, type view that tells the story from beginning to end of each incident, each outage, and still provides you with the ability to, within a single click, retrieve additional information about the topology, about the history, about the performance, about the correlated events. So you've got all of the insights. So now it truly is a 1 + 1 = 3 scenario. When we talk about what really distinguishes what Watson AIOps is doing and the key functionality distinctions, again, I keep coming back to the log anomalies. When I've seen this in the early adopters phase, and I see them say, we tell them, look, we need to see logs from when the application that we're talking about was running well. You ingest that, let the tool understand what it's supposed to look like, and then being able to, from there, find that it understands automatically what's in that log, relating it to the entities, the discoveries, the topology information, relating it to the changes, relating it to the performance data, and it all starts to come together. You just see the light bulb come on around the room, or via the Zoom call. You see everybody start to have that aha moment where they're going, wow, this is really differentiated. This is really something that I couldn't do by myself. This is certainly something I couldn't do with just one or two or three disparate tools that don't bring together that holistic view of the world. This also means by having that linkage across the entities, across different topologies, the understanding of the causality that comes into that. And when there is something that goes sideways, when there is a fault, being able to understand, okay, where is it? What is it? And the blast radius to say, okay, what's impacted by it and to what level? And because of the fact that we continually re-ingest as things occur, relearn and identify what issues we've seen before, we can now start to understand what is it that we did in the past? What was that tribal knowledge that traditionally those one or two people have? What is it that we would recommend? And once we get a high enough confidence, we can actually allow the AI to do and not require a human for. It's a tremendous, tremendous enabler and differentiator. So naturally, right about now, a lot of people are thinking, well, gee, I'm on Netcool, and where do I go from here? What do I do? Well, if you've still got a Netcool 1.5, Netcool Operations Insight 1.5 generation tooling, then you can very easily move on up into Watson AIOps. Watson AIOps 2.0 went GA in September, 2.1 GA very soon. And we'll be seeing 3 and 3.1 before the end of 2021. So it's a very rapidly evolving cadence. And what you're going to see is, as you look at Netcool AIOps Operations Insight 1.6, you saw that we added those capabilities that are already being furthered along within the Watson AIOps family. The Watson AIOps 2.0 took very, very keen advantage of the continued modernization that we had been doing, being able to leverage the containerized event analytics, being able to leverage the capabilities of the real-time observers of topology, as well as the integration of Ansible for runbook automation. So all those things continue on. If you say, well, one of the common questions now is, well, what happens with Netcool? Well, going forward, the Netcool family is merged into the Watson AIOps offerings. So going forward, this diagram, I think, gives a good view of it. The Watson AIOps 2.0 brings as the AI manager and the topology capabilities that were part of the Watson AIOps 1.0 standalone. It merges in the next generation of predictive insights as the new metric manager. It leverages the Netcool Operations Insight core capabilities for event management, brings those together. It also gives you that dynamic topology, formerly known as ASM. The next iteration of that has been immersed into the event manager as well as into the AI manager to be able to show and tell the story about the relationships, the dependencies, and those topologies. And we continue on down the path for network management. So if you have ITNM, or if you have the Netcool Configuration Manager, TNCM, those tools continue on and are available as extensions to the Watson AIOps 2.0 family. So as we build, complementing your journey here, you start out with Omnibus and Impact, because that gives you the event correlation, that gives you the enrichment, that provides you with that noise reduction. Netcool Operations Insight built upon that to give you runbook automation, gave you seasonality, gave you the event analytics and the associated grouping. We introduced predictive insights that gave you the anomaly detection specifically for metrics. The Agile Service Manager gave you the observers to be able to see the dynamic topology and the impacts of change. Watson AIOps becomes that superset that now brings together all of those things, the next iteration of those things as those continue to evolve, with incident similarity. It adds the details about what incidents are similar based on the AI's observation and NLP processing, being able to understand what the blast radius is, how those things are impactful when things do go sideways. Being able to get within that to identify explicitly what is the most probable cause and where do we start, and leveraging the anomaly detection, the log anomaly detection, to complement what we've already been doing with the metric anomaly detection, to further being able to pinpoint exactly what it is that has happened, to further enable you to group and reduce the noise from the events and from the logs, and to be able to give you that whole story-based interaction via not just ChatOps, but the forthcoming web-based UI. When we talk about what this has meant to operations across the board, it truly has been amazing to talk to customers. At Kexa Bank, for instance, they specifically said that we reduced their outage by 1 hour, and that was a $420,000 value to them. So the question about is it worth it? Undeniably. I look forward to seeing them and others speaking at our upcoming virtual event coming up when we later on, I believe it will be in May this year. And they'll be talking about, along with several others, will be sharing the stage, talking about what they've been able to do in terms of reducing costs of upskilling their operators by leveraging AI. And really exciting to me, being able to get to what really matters, get off the hamster wheel, get into providing new initiatives and doing the things that really differentiate the business.
Hey, James, can we wrap up in the next minute or two? We're going a bit long and we want to kind of get
I have just, I tell you what, I'll go ahead and save this for just one other thing, and just tell you about one other thing, and then we'll move on.
Excellent. Thank you.
The one other thing I wanted to highlight was in our next iteration of What's an AIOps, or as we're calling it, AIOps.next, the merging the SRE role as the gatekeeper of application deployments. In the early adopters who are trying out the early access code, they've seen where we're able to now have application impact avoidance, be able to get in and into that CI/CD pipeline to identify changes to the code, potential incidents, and being able to have those specific changes identified so that we can predict, if this code is implemented, that there will be additional outages. In this case, we're able to capture a full 2/3, and this is not even yet GA code, a full-on 2/3 where we were able to predict that the implementation of this new code before it ever was implemented would have resulted in outages. And that by itself, just moving further up the chain to be able to not just react faster, but now completely prevent the outage in the first place. That's really where we want to take it. So again, thank you all. I'll get out of the way so we can enjoy the whiskey and bourbons. I'm looking forward to it. And I really hope we'll get a chance to talk in the future. The last thing I want to leave you with is just, we want to offer up a free planning and consultation workshop. So if this has made you think, I'd really like to jump onto this, or maybe you're one that says, sounds great, but show me, or maybe you've just got more questions, please reach out to Manoj, reach out to Lambert, reach out to me, and let's get started. I'm really excited about what we can do, and I'm really excited about what the future holds for AIOps. So thank you, Andy. Thank you, Vicom, and back over to you.
Excellent. Thank you, James. Great presentation. So everyone, we're running a few minutes late here, but what I would just want to do as we wrap things up again. Excellent, James. So normally we park some time for Q&A. If anybody has any questions, you're more than welcome to bring them up right now. But what I would say is, if you do have questions about what we talked about, please bring them up to your account manager. You can bring them up to Lambert LaChapelle, to Manoj, to James, myself, or your account manager, and we'll be happy to address them. It doesn't look like anybody had any initial questions, but there are some specific ones that people, when we do these events, tend to want to know about. And James covered them a bit. Certainly, what happens if you already have Netcool? Can you use AIOps? And James covered that, but some people might have deeper questions on that. The others, if you're using things like Netcool and predictive insights, how do you tie What's an AIOps into that too? And that's a question we'd love to have with you as well afterwards. And if you're using a version of Netcool, the 1.x, James mentioned like 1.6 or so, what can you do around that? So we'd be happy to talk to you about that in much more detail if you have any questions on it. So What I will say to wrap us before we move on to the whiskey taste, so thank you so much for attending our presentation. We hope you found the information useful, and most importantly, really relevant to your organization and what you're doing today, especially with today's challenging times. If you're interested in hearing more about any of the solutions addressing some of those questions that we mentioned, or anything that Vicom or IBM does, please feel free to reach out to me, your account manager, to Lambert, to Manoj. We'll be happy to address that. So my contact info is on the slide here and in all of the emails you've all been receiving from me for the past few weeks. So as I get ready to turn it over to Adam to host our whiskey tasting, we want to thank you again for joining us today. And we really thank you for considering Vicom and IBM. So we do want to say, as I always say at all our events, have a great day, everyone, and stay safe during these times. Thank you.